Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network, where we reflect on Wildbow's most Christmassy work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are coming at you live in the Discord. Say hi, Discord. If you
they did
didn't, well, actually no, we didn't get any highs. I'm very disappointed in everyone.
Yeah, but nobody had to know that, Ruben.
Oh yeah, but if you want to see whether people respond to our call and response in Discord, the way to do that is by going to duffmedia.com/Discord, and you can tune into these episodes recordings live and disobey us yourself.
Yes, also a friendly reminder that we are running a fan art competition alongside Jenny and Malia. The theme is redemption, and those are due, I think Friday. So
This Friday.
It's the final week. Get cracking.
Yeah,
but I'm doing a motion that's like cracking a whip, but I realize it's audio only, so that means nothing.
But should we get into our chapters? Because this week we've got a pair of very tier chapters. We've got a very special episode coming up this week.
I really appreciate that joke, but I feel like nobody else is going to remember that we made the joke last week about the two Verona chapters being A tier, and you've just taken the joke and added very in the middle of the word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I appreciate it.
It was mainly a joke for you, Elliot.
Yeah, part of me was like, I know Wildbow doesn't work like this, but gosh, I'd love it if next week we were back to talk about a pair of Lucy chapters.
Well, what would we even say?
No spoilers, Ruben. We'll figure it out. We've got to wait.
Yeah, we'll figure it out with the 5 minutes before we start the episode, I'm sure.
But yeah, just like last week, it was like a pair of chapters where I'm like, thank fuck this aligned with like our podcast. Like if the last 2 weeks of chapters had been off by one, it would have been like, we would have suffered for it for sure. Like these are a pair of great chapters to sort of talk about where Avery's at, how she's doing, and I'm glad we get to do them together.
Yeah. The fun theme of this pair of chapters is parenting from Kelsey. And I'm sure we will talk about that as we go. But yeah, it is a really fun thing to track Kelsey being like cool and helpful and good at this shit, which is great.
Yeah, she really she catches up to Connor a lot this week.
Yeah. But let's get into it, shall we? 1913 begins with Avery revisiting Gilkey and getting the lowdown on how Marcy went from drab to fab.
Yeah, or from Faye to Slay.
Do you want me to read out the next one? You got like
three. No. I wrote
to go through it. Boom,
I wrote
boom.
A bunch of these. She went from plod to god, or my favorite one that I came up with. She went from thistle to abyssal.
She went from
that's all I got.
Mud bodice to blood goddess. Is that anything?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I'll back it.
Thanks.
Let's do it.
Yeah. But yeah, so we learn a bit about how Marcy went from thistle to abyssal, and yeah, it's interesting. Like the learning from here is like, oh, actually, the Wild Hunt can't do anything about Marcy. Whoops, sorry guys. Which is kind of shit, and proves that Marcy actually does make good plots. So yeah, I don't know. Like maybe there's a way to deal with her with this spike. Maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the thing. So it sounds like she set herself up. So you could deal with her. Like, yeah, okay. So the abyssal spike is a weak point or whatever, and you try to use it. But like, unless there's some tricks you've got on top of that, it sounds like she's made herself this like pipe between realms. And if you break her, shit's just going to get real messy.
Yeah, I mean, she pulled a Charles move and kind of made herself integral to things, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this shit before. Like, it was one of those things where you're like, yeah, no, of course, this is what these fuckwits did. Like, they make because it's such a good plan because it's like, okay, yeah, there's probably a way that somebody can always overpower it, but like with things like the Wild Hunt or Muster, like they're so status quo oriented, you just make it so that dealing with you fucks that up, and it's such a disincentive to do anything about you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually not that different, really, from what Kennett's trying to do with the market. They're just doing it in like a slower, more ethical way. But Like
Yeah, that's true.
this is
You're
essentially
right.
Lucy's plan with the
It
market.
actually is, isn't it? I didn't connect that, but you're right. Like making yourself too weird to fail, I guess, is the exact same strategy that Marcy has pulled here, huh?
Yeah, because now it's not about necessarily having the power to deal with Marcy. It's about having the ability to deal with the fucking mess you're going to make if you do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like it's not about getting her in one bite anymore because you got to. I mean, this is the other thing, right? Is so Gilky's sort of like, yeah, she's not connected to heaven, which is heaven real? Is this a thing that we know? Um, and then he like transitions from that. It's like, yeah, but it's not quite heaven. It's like a you know a realm where it rains blood, but apparently is still divine or
Sounds like
something.
heaven to me.
Yeah. Every time I start to feel like I'm getting a grasp on like how the otherverse cosmology is like put together and what the sorts of realms are, Walbo just throws curveballs. Like now I'm wondering, are there afterlives or like, yeah, I don't know, like yeah, it's crazy and like yeah, different flavors of heaven. Apparently, one where it just rains blood and there's some people there. And
Yeah.
Marcy has worshippers in the abyss. What are they
Yeah,
like?
which
Like,
sounds fun.
can we meet them? Maybe that's the way to defeat Marcy. Is somebody needs to take a dip into the abyss and just like deconvert all of her followers. Just got them and be like, hey, turns out she's a massive bitch. Don't don't worship her anymore.
Yeah, what they're gonna have to Lucy's gonna have to take a trip down there to disillusion her followers and introduce them to atheism. Is that the plan?
I mean, that sounds like a Stargate episode, so I'm all for it.
It does sound like a Stargate episode.
um, but yeah, the other thing that's happening on here is obviously we kind of learn how involved Rook was with this. Like, it's not news. I think that Rook has dabbled with the culprits and like the abyssal spike in her chest being Rook's nail from the other that was talked about 9.1 was a common theory, but like I get it the way Gilkey talks about it, it makes it sound like Rook was a part of the brainstorming session on exactly how they hook Marcy up. And I guess,
Mm.
I mean, I didn't think much of Rook, but I thought more than that. I didn't expect a lot, but I'm still disappointed.
Yeah, Rook is interesting, huh? Yeah, we need to figure out what's the deal with Rook.
I feel like it was 2 months ago that one of the Kennedys, I can't even remember which one it was so long ago, was like, Kenneth needs to have a really serious chat with and about Rook. Like, was it Lucy who said that? Or do you remember that? That was ages ago.
Yeah,
That was before the
yeah.
time skip,
I,
I think.
I guess they haven't. I don't know. It seems like Rook has not been super available for that kind of chat. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, things have been busy, I suppose, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, I've been worried for a long time that Rook was doing more with the culprits than the Candidates were aware of, and it feels like this seemingly confirms it. And it's still kind of like, when are we gonna do something about this?
Hmm. Maybe soon. We'll see. This
Yeah,
this arc is so packed though. Like,
yeah, yeah.
where do you think this arc is headed, Elliot? I
I
mean,
don't know.
maybe this is a conversation for later, but like, where?
Well, I said this like 19.10. I was like, man, either we've got one chapter or five more. And now I'm here in like 19.14. I'm like, I don't know, like either it ends about now or we've got at least five more is what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Uh, Unless we're gonna like segue into Arc 20 being all the
I
clusterfucks that were just seeded.
Yeah, I guess we got to end with. It sounds like it's going to end with Musa coming back to town. That's the impression we get at the end of this chapter, right? Sorry, the next chapter. Is like, oh yeah, Musa's going to be here like in the next few days.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I'm too disconnected from what I feel like this arc is. If that makes sense, like
Yeah,
the term "crossed with silver" doesn't mean anything to me really, so I don't quite know. It's hard to engage with the arc in any way apart from the events to know whether it might be finishing or not.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know. I just like like Rook is someone we haven't heard much from recently, and just seeing her here, I was just like, oh, like yeah. I mean, we knew this was coming, but it's so much worse. Please, somebody sit her down and like she needs to go to the Kennett civility course. Honestly, I think Rook is actually
yeah. That'll
someone
that'll show her.
like yeah, genuinely.
Um, So yeah, Avery finishes a test and then has a bit of casual banter with her friends, and then a nice chat with Nora. Um, and what a fun transition between the previous part and this part,
Yeah.
where he's counting down to when Avery's going to die from poison, and then we get the countdown for the end of the test. But I do have to say, what kind of a teacher?
Yeah.
Psychopath teacher counts down from 10 at the end of the test. Like, if you haven't finished, I'm just going to stress you the fuck out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I could see myself doing that to torture the students, but that's because I'm an
It's so
asshole. Like,
harsh.
um, yeah, like even like if I think back to exams at uni or school, we'd get the like you have 5 minutes remaining. Like the people running the exam would announce that, and even that was too much for me usually.
Yeah, it's a very fun move for a teacher to pull. Anyway, uh, yeah, we get a lot of fun banter. Avery comes up with Team Never Passes, which is a great name for this crew.
It's a good joke. Um, and I mean, the whole banter here is fun. I particularly like the part where they all make Avery think they're really mad with her. Um, like that's good teamwork right there. They just all immediately got on board for it. I think Putnam calls that out actually, but it's like I was dying from secondhand cringe as Avery was trying to recover from this.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Um, I think the other thing here that I quickly want to call out is there's this little moment where Snowdrop is just a bit of an asshole to Avery and makes her take the cold breeze that's hitting her. And it's just funny. But I feel like it's also something I think we've called out on the podcast a few times has been like being unsure about whether like whether Snowdrop is taking too much from Avery and it's not going the other way. And I felt like this was a really good moment to sort of encourage you to think it's like, yeah, it is more even than it comes across in the stories. Just we don't hear about the times Avery's relaxing and Snowdrop sends her dumb shit.
Yeah, no, it's good balance being maintained.
Yeah, I think little moments like this help sort of make that feel real.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So yeah, then we get to the main chunk of this chapter, which is Avery gets dialed into a Garrick family meeting because they have a mole, and Avery's mum is also there.
Yeah, I gosh, almost before we get to Kelsey though, well, like the Garricks have really made headway on the promenade. Like we learn a lot about it that we didn't know
Yeah,
back in Arc 10.
yeah,
Like they haven't been idle, which I guess makes sense, but still, yeah.
yeah. It seems really complicated. Like, and I was having trouble following it on my first read. I had to go a lot slower on
Yes,
that section on my second read. But like,
same.
they have to do all these different things and like gathering rumors and blah blah blah, and they have 12 different, or they think 12 different like moves that they can spend while also moving around the board and kind of um not getting into too much trouble. And then the wolf shows up. It's yeah, fuck, it's like
Yeah, well, so it sounds like you like whenever you interact with any of these things that represent the pillars, so like nature for the shade, the clock for time or whatever, that's one of your 12 moves. And if you take more than 12, the wolf shows up. But it's like it seems like it's going to take a minimum of like 8 for one person to really get through. So it's like it's turning this really tricky resource management problem, especially if you're trying to co-op it.
yeah. Yeah. It does seem tricky. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like it's from how they were talking about it, it seems like it's almost perfectly set up so that you only have almost exactly the right number of moves
Mm.
to do what you need to do.
It doesn't even Avery even suggests that that might be like a thing. Like you will have to use all 12 by the end or something. I think so. Yeah, like it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I can't wait. There's no way. Like there's no way Avery doesn't end up on here in the next few days, right?
I think so. It seems pretty likely
Like
that they're gonna do it. I
yeah,
mean, they have to do it soon to get away from Wondercand.
and I've been blowing this trumpet for fucking 10 arcs now, but we need that third wolf beat, and it has to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, cutting back to kind of the chat about the mole. it's very funny that during this chat, there are just these moments where Avery's trying to quietly say something as an aside to her mum, and everyone just is able to hear her, and she just doesn't realize. Even though the very first time she says something, and then like Peter's like, "Yeah, that's correct," and she's like, "Oh, he could hear me the whole time," and she just doesn't learn the lesson from that until the next time, I think.
Yeah, well, it's like Zed, after it happens like twice, Zed then is like, oh, just as a heads up, like everyone can hear everything. Like mumbling doesn't really work
Yeah,
in this space. And it's one of those, geez, thanks for saying that now, Zed. Like, this is the sort of thing, like, I mean, you know, if I was in Zed's shoes, I 100% would forget to mention that to people. But like, dick move forgetting it to mention it to them because it's like rereading it the second time, I was like, God, Avery really comes close to saying some stuff that, like, you know, could have upset.
yeah. So I guess it's good that she didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they were pretty chill about it, but it's like she was being pretty frank about like her evaluation of their family dynamics, and that's just always a tricky topic to talk about. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. So who do we think? Who do we think done it? Like,
Well, it
who's
seems
so?
pretty solved by the end, which is what's their face, the parents at Poppy's parents.
I mean, I don't. That's so
You don't
grim
think so?
if it is them. I don't know. The way this like this is one of those things where like I don't like playing this game in a wild bow story because I like, you know, this is what happened when we used to discuss the culprits. Is I'd be like, well, Marissa's obvious, too obvious, so it can't be her. And I'm gonna like do 3 loops around the that's what he wants me to think further than it actually is. Um, there's a line in there, and I see it's already been pulled out by Vice Versailles, where like Peter Garrick kind of gets implied by the text, where it's like they're like, who do we think did it or whatever? And then Zed announces Peter Garrick is here.
Yes.
Um, and it's just a line that like I think a lot of people read that and were like, oh, okay. I don't
I
know.
don't know. It feels too much, right? Like I know that we've obviously been talking about the somewhat tension in the family that Avery has exacerbated, but even so, I don't know if like it feels like a big step for Peter to have taken.
Yeah, but like Avery does remind us about the whole thing where you know he wasn't necessarily holding on to head of the family as much as he would have liked with the Avery stuff, and she's been mitigating that. But maybe it's still, I don't know. It does seem like a big stretch. People are bringing up the missing. We did hear about a missing Garrick a couple arcs ago. Like, there's options. I mean, I think it'd be funny
Yeah.
if it was like just Charles or something too. Like, because he was pretty ticked at the Garricks
Charles
for
just fucks them
last
over.
arc.
That
Yeah,
would
I
be
don't know.
so harsh, but not out of character.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we'll see. Um, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun little mystery.
Yeah.
Now that we don't have a murder mystery in this story, we need other little whodunits.
um, but yeah, so Avery takes a sidebar from this chat to talk to Nina about Rona's bookstore and you know the fact that they're going to be doing it and that they want some supplies.
Yeah, and it's just an excuse to have some good Nina time. She's just it's just a ball of positive energy.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, she's very fun. uh, yeah, it's good to see her again because she was like this example of an other that like people unequivocally just kind of liked. And you know, in the BHI arc, she was able to kind of be a symbol of, hey, others can be nice and chill too.
Yeah,
So it is nice that she's back.
Yeah, I remember in the BHI arc, she was basically the example of like, stop binding others because like Nina is just cool. Like even Kelsey brings it up where they're like, she's like John, except her thing is she wants to talk to you about books and go to bookshops, and it's like, how can you hate that? Like that's just
Yeah.
a good thing. Um, and like she's so nice and funny. Like she's just excited that Verona's excited about stuff. It's yeah, you're right. I'm glad she's coming back, especially now that Verona has that bookshop. Like, I want to read the chapter where Nina just comes to Verona's bookshop and is a massive nerd about it.
Yeah, I think that would be a good chapter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I don't know if it has to tie into the rest of the plot or anything. I'll just read it either way.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it would be just fun times.
We also get some fun lore on elves, which felt timely too, because we were just talking in the Monster Corner a few weeks ago about how elves and fairy are kind of the same thing. Like brought that up for the first time in forever, and now we find out elves are real in this world, and they actually kind of sound like they're losers, but in a fun way.
Yeah, they seem cool. Not as annoying as Faye.
I mean, it sounds like they just hole up and write books that are too long, which, like,
Yeah, which is great.
yeah, I mean, we're all here supporting an author who, writes books that are very long that we love. So,
Do you
like,
think this
yeah.
is Warbo's,
Yeah.
confession that he's actually secretly been an elf this whole time?
Well, Blobber was an elf this whole time.
It would make sense. But yeah, so the Garricks here are asking for Avery's help doing kind of prep for like the next 48 hours, but she says, I can't, too busy, soz. They offer her 100, tens of thousands of dollars, and she cannot. But Avery's mum comes in to help kind of, you know, get them to back off, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny how on the second read, I noticed Kelsey like hadn't said anything, and I think the first thing she probably really says in this conversation is when they throw the 40K offer at her the first
Yeah.
time. Like that's when she actually enters this, and obviously that ties into what she says later about how like it's weirdly made it easier for her that now like it became more like a business deal and money got involved. Um, Even though like mostly she was just here because of that coworker's tragedy with their kid or whatever. But it's just so funny how like Avery's there and she's like, money's not really the issue, and they're like $75,000, and she's like, oh, this is worse. Like, so good.
Yeah, it is a good moment. But yeah, like we learn a bit more about how much of a high-powered business exec Kelsey actually is,
Yeah.
which is great. And you really kind of feel it. Like she really has that like talent for practical logistics that those kinds of people have, right? It's very fun to see.
Yeah, because we didn't know what her job was before this, right? Like this was news to us too. Um,
Yeah,
it's one of those things where I think Avery's just always seen her mom as her mom and not really engaged with what she actually. I was probably about this age before I really started to understand what my mom did for work. Um, like yeah, but like this is great because this is the shit that Avery is fucking terrible at. Like Kelsey is such a great compliment to her in this chapter and the next one because like Avery demonstrates multiple times in this chapter she knows absolute fuck all about money. She's that space cadet who like is completely detached from those values. She's on the path. She needs the person having her back who's like actually capable of doing the business side.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like that thing, when you're a programmer and they're like, you need to partner up with a business person if you want to do like a startup because like programmers can't do the business side of things. Um, Avery's like the programmer here and she needs Kelsey to do the business side.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's also just good because Kelsey has been the one who has been pulling away, and that's why Avery kind of lets her get in on this because she wants her mum to not be so scared for her, and it's just nice seeing it work. Like, I think Jasmine is now the only awareant who feels like this has been a negative thing that she's kind of
yeah,
gotten involved.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I feel like that's because Avery's whole deal is not as defined by the fucked up shit in Kennet. You know what I mean? Like Avery's able to be
Yeah,
out there doing other things that aren't just fighting Charles.
yeah. I was about
Kind
to
of, yeah.
Avery's out there doing like fun things and meeting people, whereas Lucy's just getting in fights and ending up in the hospital. I
Yeah,
think she's been in the
exactly.
hospital like 3 times since Jasmine became aware. Like she's Kelsey and Connor drew an easier straw for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think makes it easy for them to be supportive of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't know. It's just like I think the last time we saw Lucy, we got that reminder that for her, opening up to Jasmine has meant Jasmine's not really someone she can confide in as easily anymore. Like she could kind of talk around stuff and do it before. Now she kind of can't. Um, so it'll be interesting to see where Jasmine and Lucy end up on that front.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, so with all this talk of like, Avery getting paid 75 grand for 2 days work or whatever, we still don't get confirmation that Kelsey knows that Avery's already sitting on a pretty healthy 5-figure sum from the last time she dealt with the Garricks, do we? Like, is Kelsey aware that Avery's got like over 50 grand sitting in an account somewhere?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. It doesn't seem like they're. I mean, no. Avery's been pretty good about keeping them informed about stuff, so maybe they know.
I actually would have told them, but also, like, especially after these two chapters, Kelsey needs to be managing that money. And I'm very hesitant to, especially for like a child of this age, to just suggest that, the lesson here should be that their parent manages their finances or whatever. But Avery kind of seems demonstrably shit at money so far. Like, we're just talking about it's like, get Kelsey to invest it or like manage it.
Well, yeah. I mean, like,
Avery's not financially literate yet, and so until she is, I do think Kelsey should be managing her funds.
yeah. I think it's hard for a child to be financially literate, right? Like,
Yeah,
we've got Verona misses $60 on water bottles or whatever.
but
Um,
Verona's that fun kind of like. Was she because she does also appreciate the value of money because of like the way things have worked with her dad. So she kind of flip flops between being incredibly cheap and just being like, "I'll throw all the money at it." Um, Whereas Avery just doesn't seem like I remember reading years ago about how like I think it was like Albert Einstein's wife did all his business deals because he just like, didn't understand what the value of money was. Like people would offer him like $100,000 or something, and he's like, I don't know if that's enough money or not. Ask my wife. And that's what Avery feels like. Avery's just sort of
yeah,
like, is this many of the monies? Like it's a banana. What does it cost? $10,000?
yeah,
Like I don't know. Um, and so until we can get her to actually understand money better than Raquel probably does. Like Kelsey just needs to be in charge.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a good move.
Um, Also, props to Jude here. We've been singing Kelsey's praises a lot, but I think Jude is actually the one who saves this moment from his family's side because Avery is saying no, and it's not about the money, and his parents or his family just keep pressuring her with like more money, and Jude's actually the one who's like, "Hey, why does the money not matter?
Yeah,
What else is going on? Like, tell us about it." And then his family starts interrupting as she talks, and he's like, "No, no, no, let her explain this to us." And it like
yeah,
it I mean, again, Jude is the male version of Avery, and like he's the one who's actually like, "Hey, tell us about what's going on with you." And then his family kind of gets it after that, and Kelsey's able to swoop in and like properly pull them out. But like, this would have been harder without Jude.
yeah. I mean, it's a good, it's a good move. Well done, Jude. I suppose.
Yeah, as Aziza did it says in chats, it was a real spiffy move. Top 10 spiffy moments.
Yeah. um, Spiffy. Yeah, sure. But yeah,
He's
so
such a dork.
so they leave this call, they head back home, and Avery has a chat with Nora. She kind of reviews all the stuff to be done and refocuses on her next job, recruiting Muss's offcuts.
Yeah, I feel like this is about the fifth instance of hearing about Avery's next negotiation and me thinking, oh, this feels like the final boss negotiation. Like, we've had Semeniego, we've had like so many others where it's just like, oh, this is going to be the toughest one yet. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel like the real vibe from this section, as well as that cliffhanger, which like, thank God we're not sitting on that cliffhanger right now. That would have sucked. But like this is another moment of like Avery is kind of burning herself out and is pretty overwhelmed and is juggling too many things and is getting better support through people like her mom who are like because now she's bringing people in, they're helping her to realize that she's taken on too much, and I'm just that seems like a really positive energy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good vibes.
Like, yeah, because like Avery fell through the cracks because her parents had overloaded themselves and didn't notice something was missing. And now Kelsey's not only like paying attention to all her kids, but is also noticing Avery's pulling the same shit again and is like calling her out on the fact that she's going to burn herself out and make mistakes and miss things if she's not careful. Like it's such a good step from Kelsey to not only be no longer making the same mistake, but keeping an eye out for Avery doing it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, should we get into the next chapter? I mean, like, it's a good place for us to.
Yeah.
A- Avery talks about recruiting muscles offcuts, and it's like, I'm very glad these chapters are connected, so that we don't have to wait
Yes.
for that.
Like I read the chapters only like late last night, like back to back, and I was like, God, I would have been so mad if like I'd been sitting on this for 3 days and then it had been a Lucy chapter or something.
Yeah. um, but yeah, so next chapter 19.14, Avery and Kelsey start by being bound to the party.
I'm so glad we finally get to see this path properly. Like we've heard the description, we caught glimpses of it when we, put Florin in a timeout there. But it was really fun to see the whole thing run through.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's fun to see it from, the full flow of prep, getting into it, kind of discussing, solving it, getting out the other end. Like, it was just good
Yeah.
stuff.
And it didn't seem like that bad a path. I mean, I guess this is why it's one of the common, often one runs. Like it seemed doable. Like this is one of the first paths I've looked at. I mean, I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't seem
Especially,
too tough.
yeah. Well, and you get to pick the animals too, right? Like I think that's the
Well,
real
yeah,
thing.
those are
Is
the
is
stuffed toys that Avery
yeah.
put in. So yeah,
So
you would
so
think
if you're
so.
not under pressure, like you can manage it. Like yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you would think. Um,
But sorry, before they get in there, I just want to say as well, I love Avery doing like the pre-flight checklist before they go on, because that's one of those things where it's like you 100%, if you were a path runner, you'd need a system for that shit, or it'd be so easy to forget, like a flashlight or something. Um, and I just remember like Jude was kind of telling Avery that when they first met in Arc 4, and now we've got like Avery here, and she's like coaching her mum through the checklist. Like it was just it was a great moment to sort of show how competent Avery is at this, and kind of also like at the same time get her mum to appreciate like that this is serious shit that they're about to do.
mm, yeah, yeah. It really helps it land. I think the thing that helps it land is Avery clotheslining her mum, though. Like, that really kind of is a clear, oh, things are serious.
It's also just fucking
It is
funny.
very funny. Yeah, but yeah, fun mother daughter bonding activity, path running. So yeah, good stuff.
um yeah, it's such a hilarious mixed bag for a mother daughter activity, though, isn't it? Because like, yeah, on the one hand, life risking, path running nonsense, blah blah, but like honestly, they do have a nice time together. They kind of get to dress up for it, or they get dressed up for it. Um, Avery gets to like show her mum her passion. Like, unironically, this did seem like a nice mother daughter day out.
Mm, yeah, yeah. No, it seemed kind of fun. Good stuff.
Yeah, and like the punk theming was just hilarious because it's like it is one of those things. Avery, all of her like friends that she's really starting to hang out with are all very alternative style. It feels like Liberty and Nora, and it's just funny because I picture Avery as having the most like vanilla sports playing fashion sense, and you kind of get the vibe from this trip that that's kind of mum enforced at the moment, and it's going to be very
Mm,
interesting to see what Avery looks like after 3 years on her own.
yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the bit where with the tattoos, where Avery is like,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very fun to see what Avery is going to be like when she has a bit more space to grow into whatever her future version of herself is.
yeah, and I enjoy the banter about the tattoos as well. Like Avery sort of looks at them and then like looks at her mum. It's great.
Yeah. um, but yeah, we get all the different party animals. Mr. Ape, who I didn't even realize was copying Avery until she pointed it out, and then we get to see all of their fun, you know, shticks.
I like how he seems real mad that she's going to the party. She's like, "Are you going to the party?" He's like, "Are you going to the party?" She's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Oh yeah, okay." Like,
Yeah, I know. And then you reread it, and you're like, "Oh, ape, I get it."
I thought it was really funny how Avery describes him as bald, but he's making up for it with really thick hair on his like shoulders and arms. Because I was like, speaking as a bald person, I've never heard that referred to as making up for it. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think anyone's aiming for this.
I mean, you never know. Um, but yeah, so I guess the fun part of this part of the chapter is like it's a new path, and seeing a new path is always
Yeah.
very fun. Like just seeing, trying to figure out how it all works, and seeing all the shenanigans. Like it's good stuff.
Yeah, and because like we know that this is a relatively safe one. We know Avery's done it before at least once. It's also a path where seemingly the challenge is just tracking a bunch of people around you and making sure they're having all their needs met, which is like Avery can do that with her eyes closed. So it's
Mm,
like on the one hand, it's kind of this super easy casual path, but we do still have the tension because Kelsey's here and you don't know if she's gonna like commit some sort of faux pas or make a mistake. Like
mm,
um so it's kind of fun in that way, and it's like it's not too stressful, but it's also the stress is still there because you're like, well, something could go wrong if Kelsey fucks up.
mm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. But then it doesn't, and it's just kind of nice, and you get all the nice animals, animal people.
Yeah. Wait, like the fawn one that
Mm.
comes out. It's just talking about how great Avery is, and it even looks
Well,
like her, and
yeah,
it was a real
yeah,
fetch
it's
moment.
fawning over her. Yeah. Um.
um, sorry, I love the bit where we learn as well that this path can kind of turn into some other paths, and they're all kind of linked by their name. Like it's like this becomes the party crash, which
Yes.
then leads to like the crash course.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
and
party
there's this,
down, or yeah.
yeah, and there's this sense that it's kind of like as the practitioners discover and name and shape them, because I think we know that like the initial practitioners sort of shape how a path forms.
Yeah.
It's this real sense of like, oh yeah, so well, Avery sort of says she wants to be somebody who starts discovering new paths and ties them together like this in a way that makes sense. And I thought it was
Mm.
funny that she was like, the way she said, I'm going to do it in a way that makes sense, makes me think of like, you know, that person where there's like a hundred sort of standards in programming, and somebody's like, none of these make sense. I'm going to make the 101st standard. And then everybody else looks at it and it's like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what makes sense to you isn't going to make sense to anyone else. And I can't wait to see Avery's like, she's put all these paths together and she's like, yeah, it's all really logical. They all fit together in a way that man, everyone else is going to look at it and be like, the fuck are these guys? How are these related?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's just kind of fun, and it's Avery is very like, oh, this is the kind of thing I'd like,
Yeah.
which is great. Yeah. So yeah, they get to the other side of the party, and it's the Mussa residence, the place you definitely want to go after a party.
I love. I mean, this like there's real Downton Abbey sort of vibes to this place, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
immediately, it's like maids, and Avery's mom is like, "Wow, that's like an unironic maid outfit. I've never seen that before." Um, like it's just yeah, and yeah, the way they were saying "ma'am" or anything, it felt like I was watching a BBC show.
yeah. But yeah, this is right into the hornet's nest, and immediately you're like, oh shit, this is very serious.
Yeah, because like, yeah, I mean, last chapter we got set up that we were going to see all the runoffs or anything like you said, but it's still you're kind of like, oh god, into the lion's den for sure.
Yeah.
Um, also, so we learn that the drop off point for Bound to the Party is a one person party somewhere,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
I was
Which
like,
is not much
that
of a party, but sure.
yeah, but like that's kind of like I could almost imagine just a well-meaning finder just running the path constantly to crash poor lonely people who like nobody showed up for this kid's birthday, and then this finder crashes through the roof and just tries to have fun with you at your party. Like that's a short story I'd read.
That's very silly.
Like yeah, I don't know. You could use this path to help people who don't have any friends, and that's nice. Although I think a lot of parties of one might be alone on purpose, like.
Mm.
So you'd have I don't know what the limits are on party. You might have to be careful, but yeah.
Yeah. Sure, you might have to be careful. Do practitioners ward their parties so they don't have unexpected finders just dropping in?
Well, it's a party of one only. So or you just I mean, I guess if you're throwing a one-person party, you might need to, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's a fun bit here through this chapter where Raquel is very fangirling about blasphemy. What is blasphemy girls? Is that what it's called?
Blasphemy halls? One of those. It's
Blasphemy,
blasphemy, one of those two words, I think.
blasphemy something. Anyway, and just I just wonder what Kelsey thinks about how Raquel is Sheridan's biggest fan. Like, what would go through your mind as Kelsey knowing that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel so strange about it.
Because like I'm pretty convinced. I don't like I'm just thinking. I'm pretty sure my mom doesn't believe that anybody listens to our podcast. I'm not convinced anyone listens to our podcast. So I'm just imagining like my sister being like, "Oh yeah, this is somebody who listens to Elliot's podcast." I feel like my mom would be like, "Explain, like why,
Why
why,
though?
why do you do this?"
Yeah.
Whereas Kelsey just kind of takes it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just think that would be really funny to be in a situation where you're negotiating with a magic family and then find out one of the people in
Yeah.
that family is like Sheridan's biggest fan.
Well, especially because she's the Musser as well. It's like, so this is Raquel Musser, niece of, the really bad guy that we've been trying to fight for months. She loves Sheridan's podcast. So those are the two facts about her. Niece of our big enemy listens to Sheridan's podcast on a shitty CW show.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the fangirly of Raquel though was absolutely the part where she references the show and Fernanda just has to like, oh, can you please shut the
Can you
fuck
shut
up?
up about it?
That was the moment. Like, that's one of those great little moments where it just helps you feel that like Raquel is like this all the time.
Yeah. She's been made worse. Raquel has been made worse and more.
No, I think that's the thing. Is like honestly, you see so many people who have unhealthy attachments to these CW shows, but it's like that's still a step up for Raquel. If she turns into one of these weird online shippers for Blasphemy Girls, that's still better than being a muscle.
I guess technically.
Like, I'm not saying it's the ideal situation, but like, yeah, I'd take an Elicity shipper over a fucking Musser any day of the week.
I don't know about that. I guess if I had to pick, I would pick an Elicity shipper, but it's not. It's closer
Baby
than
steps,
you're
Ruben.
saying.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, just the other Fernanda bit I wanted to call out is when Avery introduces Fernanda as a Blue Heron student who is like Nicolette's mentor's little sister, and Fernanda's like, actually, ew, like what a way to be described. And I was like, you know what? I'm with Fernanda on that. Like, if I was related to Chase and people like that's Chase's brother, I'd be like, hey, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
you're defined by your relationship with Chase. How far?
yeah, like fuck, call her like Layla Throop's ex best friend or something. Like that'd be better.
I guess. But yeah, so here is at this house is a conglomeration of people who actually think, uh-oh, these power structures aren't all that they've cracked up to be. And it's good that they've gotten here. Better late than never, I suppose. Like Raquel, last time we saw her was very, towing the Musa party line. And then we find out why she's switched, which is now that it is impacting her more directly. She's coming around, which is good, I guess. Still,
I'd push back on saying she was fully towing the line. Like I'm thinking of I think the last time we probably saw her in Arc 13 was that confrontation with the goblins in front when she was guarding the house by herself. And fuck off, Chadwick. Sorry, and she like Raquel. She was like, she stopped kind of actively. She started fence sitting, I guess, at that point is how I describe how we last saw her in Arc 13, right?
yes.
Like, so it was kind of like she was starting to ride the line, and I feel like indulging the Kenneteers and becoming obsessed with shitty dramas was already the sort of like fence sitting kind of not quite working against Musa, but not really helping him anymore sort of vibe. And then this engagement has clearly just pushed her right over the fucking edge.
Yeah, which is good. I'm glad that she got there in the end.
Yeah, I can't really blame her for taking that long though. Like, it'd be hard, especially with someone like Massa, when you're completely at his mercy to have the courage to actively work against him. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But you could also argue that Raquel, it was always going to be like this. Like even in good times, something like this was probably going to happen. Um, Also, it's worth pointing out, all of these women talk about how they have a bit more freedom to meet and discuss, fucking the system wherever they can because Charles has made it so everyone else is too busy. So once again, Charles doing the good work. You'll love to see it.
Yeah.
He's just a good influence on the region.
Yeah, he's
Charles,
making
yeah,
change in
Charles
the
for
world.
Carmine. Yeah, yes, we
Charles
can.
McCormick, he's already there, mate. You don't need to campaign for him.
Yeah, for his re-election.
I don't think they've got term limits. I think it's a for life posting.
Well, he can throw one, just throw one anyway. Do a
Sure,
campaign
sure,
rally even
sure.
when he's got the job.
Like
Sane
a
people do that.
renewing your vows kind of thing.
Or like the votes they do in like Russia or North Korea, right? Where it's just like vote
Sure,
for the
sure.
next
Yeah.
Carmine, but it's only Charles.
Yeah. Any other contenders mysteriously disappear before the day of the
Yeah,
election.
exactly. I mean, not
Um,
that there are any other contenders. This is like Lucy's whole
not yet.
problem.
Yeah, Lucy has not found one. Um, so yeah, Avery is trying to broker peace. So she's brought along this contract, but before we actually get a chance to figure out what it is, the gang gets interrupted.
I was so upset and tense when this happened. Like when these women showed up and they didn't all have a chance to like hide the paperwork and kind of.
Mhm.
I really thought the ending for this was going to be, oh no, we were just making a deal to help our families, and it'd be like suspicious eyes, but nobody would directly get called out. But
Yeah.
this woman shows up and it immediately goes to shit, and I was like, oh no, like this has gone terribly. It seems like,
Well, except the contract gets signed, right? Like,
yeah.
so I don't know, maybe not.
I,
I saw a really interesting. I didn't write down who said it, but I saw a really interesting comment. I think on Reddit about how now that Raquel has been engaged, that is actually some sort of security for her as well. Like because
yeah,
Musa
good point.
can't just lock her away because she's kind of in this weird spot of being as the comment said, in like a transitory period of, terribly obviously being kind of owned slash controlled by two different men between Musa and her future husband.
No, but yeah, but he needs her for that
Exactly.
deal, and he needs the deal.
Yes.
So
So
yeah,
she
yeah, yeah,
is
yeah,
kind of like, he can't just lock her away forever, right? Which is
yeah.
good.
Well, no, you're right.
um,
You're right. This is the time to pull this shit because,
yes, because she actually does, for a
yeah,
little
good
bit, have
point.
almost a kind of diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, like they can't do anything too crazy right now. I
Yeah.
mean, there's that grim moment where Avery goes to give her the Christmas present from Sheridan, and Raquel's like, "You better hold on
You
to
better
it.
hold on to it for a bit. Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be in a position to enjoy it." And that was one of those bits where I was like, "Oh, they all shot their shot, and it's gone so horribly. Like it's gone well. She signed the contract or whatever,
Yeah.
but like I really wanted them to get away with this, and they haven't at all." Um, but yeah,
But it's interesting
it is
because,
a really good point that this is the safest Raquel's ever going to be to pull
well,
dumb shit like this.
yeah, and the thing I love about this is we don't know what this contract is. It's something to strengthen the bonds between Kenneth and this group of outsiders or whatever. But like the best play for Musa would be to effectively disown Raquel and say, excommunicate her and say like, no, she doesn't speak for the family, or she's not a part of the Musa family, so she can't sign
Yeah.
anything with any authority. But then that's exactly the opposite
Yes.
of what he's doing by marrying her off. Like if he does that, that's such a fuck you to her future husband, saying, no, actually Raquel's nobody, so this
Yeah.
is nothing. Like it's so interesting how it's worked out.
Well, because I feel gross talking about it like this, but it's like she is like she needs to be presented as like primo massa for the deal
Exactly
to be as
right.
valuable as it is,
And
presumably. And
therefore
like,
the contract
yeah,
has much more inherent weight, which I think is just wonderful.
yeah, yeah. I hadn't thought. Oh, Raquel, you genius.
I know
Um,
it's like it feels like it's completely unintentional from like Avery and Raquel's perspectives, but it's actually just kind of worked out.
Yeah, I love as well how like Raquel, you know, she's signing it without reading it, which is this real moment of like Avery just continuing to fix the world by being chill. Um, but like Raquel's like, will this stop him? And everyone's like, whoa, whoa, we're not meant to talk about that. And Avery's sort of like, I can't promise it will. We kind of hope it might, maybe. Um, but like, I don't really think I can guarantee you that you signing this will really help. And Raquel's like, but you think it might. And she's like, I guess it's like, fuck it, good enough for me. Like, you know, take what I can get. Um, it's a moment that just feels really powerful when Raquel just is just like, fuck my uncle.
Yep. So yeah, fun stuff. Some real fun
Yeah.
stuff.
Do you reckon we know who Raquel's fiance is? Like,
Yeah.
I kind of got the vibe that Moss is calling external favors, so it's somebody we may not necessarily have seen, but maybe it could be someone we've heard of.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, Basil is the one that jumps to mind, but it doesn't seem. I feel like if it was Basil, we would know that it was Basil a little bit more tangibly.
I also I don't think it would be anyone who was already involved, if
Mm,
that makes sense. Like anybody who was already part of this organized, like it feels like this was done to bring somebody in.
yeah.
So I don't know that it's anybody from the 80 invader group who was helping before Charles fucked everything up.
So then, are there any big practitioners we've heard about who haven't taken a spot yet?
Yeah, exactly. Like n- none jump to mind. Like Ray's other apprentices.
Yeah, yeah, true.
But like they seemed a lot cooler
They
than that.
seem chill. Yeah.
um, I'm thinking of characters not from Pale who would be fun, but that's optimistic. Um,
Yeah. Y-
yeah,
You mean Taylor, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Could be anyone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, so yeah, Raquel chooses to trust Avery and signs the contract without having seen it, and the Kelly ladies make a quick exit.
Yeah, it's a like, little close call on the way out too. Like Kelsey either doesn't appreciate or is surprisingly unfazed by the number of inch from death moments she has over these two chapters.
Yeah, yeah. Doesn't doesn't really recognize that things have gotten rough. But yeah, Kelsey was pretty good. Came in with some clutch moments for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I genuinely would be mad at Avery if Kelsey isn't a pretty core part of all her business negotiating going forward. Like it's the part of her ambassadorial role she's terrible at. Kelsey's clearly great at it. It would be good for them to be doing it. Like because Connor just kind of complements a. Oh, no, sorry, doesn't compliment it. He's just got the same kind of strengths and weaknesses. Like he's just
Mm,
Connor's just the goofball going along for the ride, and so it's like the way Kelsey kind of grounds Connor. I think she's also going to be grounding Avery the same way in these like deals.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good stuff.
Um,
Great work.
but yeah, and so both these chapters have really like we're setting up very crunchy and immediate deadlines now because Avery basically ends this chapter by thinking, okay, Muss is going to figure out what we're doing here, so he's going to head straight to Kennet right now because he's going to know that this is serious.
Mm,
Um, and then obviously last chapter was all about how the promenade is happening right here, right now too.
mm,
And I still refuse to accept a version of this story that doesn't have Avery go there for a bit. Um, so yeah, like it feels like these two chapters were very much saying, okay, like shit, it's happening now. Shit's about to go down. Um, I can't wait.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like we're going to get. If this isn't the end of the arc, we're going to get the next few chapters are going to be Musa arriving in Kennet, right? Um, which is going to be
Yeah,
exciting.
that's where my overly optimistic pair of Lucy chapters theory comes in, where it's just like,
Yeah,
defending Canada against these initial onslaughts, so we can tap on Lucy for a bit.
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, that's the end of our chapters for this week. But as a reminder, we have a discussion question that's running this fortnight. Make an other to counter a specific practitioner in the story, and we'll try and guess who you're countering. Obviously,
Mm.
inspired by the chat that Verona and Charles had last week. We've got a bunch of responses. I haven't looked at them yet because I don't want to spoil myself on them. I kind of want
Yeah.
to tackle them when we're in the chat.
It's this weird thing where I noticed the thread had a bunch of great answers, and then also people discussing the answers and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
I don't
we
want to
probably shouldn't
spoil. Yeah, I
get
know.
involved in that because I think we've got to do it live
Yes.
on the thing. So everyone else, go and have fun in those conversations without us, I guess. It's also been happening on our Discord. People have been pitching them in there, and I've been intentionally not reading those for fear of
Yes.
spoiling them if they're on
Yes.
Reddit. So yeah, like we will get to them, but it looks like everyone else is having a ball.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into them next week. You can leave those in our discussion thread, which we linked in the show notes down below.
Yes, don't forget to also check out our Twitter. It's there. Memes get posted there semi-regularly.
Yeah, every day, some would say. And also, while we're here, we should call out. You can leave predictions for our Pale Predictor form.
Oh yeah.
That's also linked in the show notes. We haven't got that many predictions in the past few weeks, so we haven't been reading out many. But if people want to get predictions, make predictions about where the story's going to go and all that jazz, good predictions we'll read out on the or on the show. So yeah, go leave some predictions, and we'll read those and we'll feature some on the show if we
Yeah,
like them.
get your Wonder Canned Tattletale predictions in there.
Oh yeah,
Like, yeah,
you
there's
as in you mean Tattletale is the mole?
oh yeah, it's the crossover we've all been waiting for.
Yeah. But also, yeah, if you want to check out any of the other great shows on the Duff Media Network, you can go to duffmedia.com and you can find all the great shows there.
Yes, don't forget to stop by our Patreon too, patreon.com/doofmedia. That is how we afford to make this show. It is how we have afforded all of the equipment for All Packed Up 2, which we've started loosely talking about putting that together again. At the moment, there's some big plans happening there that I'm excited for.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And don't forget about Wildbow's Patreon, patreon.com/Wildbow. You don't need a Kelsey for that negotiation. Just give him all the
It's
money
not
that you
much of a
have.
negotiation, but yeah, I suppose. Yeah, and with
Just
that,
don't have that Kelsey in your ear suggesting what the numbers mean. Just increase the numbers. Just give him all the money. Be the
yes,
Avery. Just
and
give away.
and we'll see you next time, folks.